Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Economic Development and Culture Committee meeting. Today's March 19th, 2024. We will begin our meeting now. Give me one moment to take that. Okay, my name is Suzanne Malave. I'm the chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:37 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by our staff liaison. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. To raise your hand through Zoom, click the participants icon and you will find the raise hand function there. If you have technical difficulty, click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. Members should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. The chat should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record when recognized. Please keep your questions and comments brief and on topic to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Angel, can you do the roll call, please?
Sure. Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. April Autry,
Present.
Mark Bogursky,
Present.
Brandon Gillespie, present. Christina Johnson, Giselle Malave,
Present.
Jessica Morris, Eugene Rodriguez is excused, Vinnie Torres, Jenny Tromsky, Anne Marie Vasquez.
Present.
We do not have one.
Okay, because we are still waiting for a quorum, we will have a recess and come back when we have achieved quorum. 15 minutes is the time we're given. Welcome back, everyone. Seeing that quorum is not present and we will not be able to achieve quorum this afternoon, we will adjourn this meeting for another scheduled date and time before our next economic development meeting, which will be held on April 16th. We will try to, like I said, adjourn this meeting.
Open at the door. Maybe a lifeline.
We may have achieved quorum. Yes.
Then we'll have a stay of execution from the governor.
Yes?
Think so.
You think so?
Oh, that's Christina.
Yay!
She's just ending the meeting.
Ending
Because we didn't have quorum, but you came, so.
Yeah. So we have quorum?
We have quorum.
Just paid for him.
Good.
All right, so scratch all of that. We'll do attendance again, then we'll start.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that, and thank you for your patience, everyone. Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. April Autry,
Present.
Mark Bogursky,
Present.
Brandon Gillespie, present. Christina Johnson,
Present.
Giselle Malave,
President,
Jessica Morris, Eugene Rodriguez is excused, Vinnie Torres, Jenny Tromsky, Anne Marie Vasquez,
Present.
and Jason Wu. We have quorum.
Good thing you pulled out the end of the alphabet, otherwise everything else.
the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Committee members, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from our last meeting were distributed to committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. Committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing no objections, the minutes from last meeting are adopted. The minutes of tonight's meeting are being taken by Anne Marie Vasquez. announcements. So we do have an announcement this evening. On March fifth, the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection released the city's newly expanded landmark Workers' Bill of Rights, a multilingual and comprehensive guide to rights in the workplace in New York City, which was created in collaboration with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs and the New York City Commission on Human Rights. This new version of the Workers' Bill of Rights summarizes additional city laws and now also includes state and federal laws that protect workers and job applicants in New York City, regardless of immigration status. The application portal for Dining Out NYC is now open for businesses or community leaders that would like a deeper dive in the program and application process. The NYC Department of Transportation will be hosting a presentation on March 27th at 11 a.m. You can register at the link provided. And as a reminder, setup guides are available online to help food service establishments understand the requirements for outdoor dining. Information and resources are available at www.nyc.gov/diningoutnyc. Any other announcements?
Just one more. On March first, the New York City Housing Authority announced a new project labor agreement with the Building and Construction Trades Council of Greater New York and the unions that BCTC represents, with a number of expanded and additional flexibilities to increase Section 3 opportunities, as well as opportunities for minority and women-owned enterprises. Excuse me. In these negotiations, NYCHA focused primarily on improving access to jobs and good paying careers in the construction industry for NYCHA residents and other low-income New Yorkers through employment on NYCHA contracts. The complete PLA can be downloaded at, there's a link provided there, and I'll also have it available on the online version of these minutes.
Thank you, Angel. Okay, that concludes our announcements. We're gonna move on to the informational updates portion of our meeting. First up, we would like to hear from any of the business development organizations currently set up on to speak tonight.
Samaya from Union Settlement is on.
Okay, hi Samaya.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Maya. I'm the Deputy Director of Economic Development over at Union Settlement. And I'm here to just announce a few upcoming events we have within the next month. So we have the ongoing project, which is a collaboration with Youth Action Youth Build. And that's under the Reimagine Workforce Grant, where we have currently 20 participants enrolled between 17 and 24, and they will be having their graduation ceremony on April 19th. So that will be at the Sendero Verde space. And the amazing thing about this program is that they're actually going to be having a mixer and interviews with small business owners from the neighborhood who previously agreed that they wanted to hire and interview and potentially hire these participants. So we're hoping that those restaurant owners are amazed by their skills and all of the skills that they build throughout the workforce initiative. And they will invite them to join their workforce. A few other events we have going on will be a merchant meeting. And this is just a regular meeting where we are hearing about how we can be more supportive to the merchants in the neighborhood. We also have a restaurant crawl next week. So this is exciting. We're working with 4 restaurants along Lexington and bringing 20 lucky community members around to those restaurants so that they can enjoy the dining and then also get a sense of where they might go, and they might go out once they decide to use their dollars in the neighborhood. And then I'll share 2 more. One is an exciting launch that we have for our Spring Map campaign. So you all can look out for that starting April 1st. And that's going to be detailing a few community events, but mostly local businesses in the neighborhood, and with the map that will show where everyone can find those businesses to frequent. And then finally, we have a financial literacy workshop. So this is going to be 6 weeks long, starting Thursday, April 18th. So we'll get more information out to you. We have a flyer and everything, but that will be at the Family Enrichment Center on 111th. It'll be going for 6 weeks with various themes, depending on the week, and it'll be drop-in. So anyone can come in, and you all can please feel free to share the word.
Thank you, Maya. This sounds exciting. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
there's a lot going on this spring.
And you can send that to Angel, please, so that he can just pass it around to our members. That way we all know where we can pop up and show support.
Thank you. I will do that. Thank you.
I'll open it up to any questions for our committee members. If there are any.
Quick question. What was the name of that restaurant again?
I'm sorry, which one?
The one you said, the new restaurant that was opening? Didn't you say there was a new restaurant opening?
I said that we were gonna have a restaurant crawl, so we were gonna go to 4 different places. I can, the restaurants will include Bar Goyana, EHBC, Lexington Social, and Plu Thai.
Thank you.
Where are they located? Whatever you have to.
Oh yeah, so they're all gonna be along Lexington between 100 and 107th. So East Harlem Bottling Company is right on our corner, right on 107th. Lexington's, I can pull up the rest of the addresses for you because I don't have them listed right off the top, but it's gonna be right on that block. And so everyone's gonna have a chance to just move along together. I can get you the list of restaurants too.
Yes,
Please.
please, can you do that? And, are you guys planning to do another crawl in another section of East Harlem? Seems like Lexington, there is always the restaurant, you know, crawl. We gotta go
Yes,
to
exactly.
first.
The restaurants continue. Yeah, there's so many. So we will definitely build on this initiative so that it doesn't just take place in that small section. We love the idea of working on the restaurant row campaigns to expand awareness about that. But also, if anyone were to have recommendations or a restaurant that you know is interested in being involved, please send it our way, and we'll be happy to engage them for the future.
Of course, thank you, Maya. My question would be, for the graduation, is there a limit to, let's say, when the graduates meet the business owners
Mhm.
and interview, so to say, is there a limit to how many, people they can interview or how many like jobs, let's say, or prospective jobs they can take at that point, or is it just like?
So
one?
there are. Mhm. So there are 20 total participants, and about half of them are eligible for this portion because the other half, they're going to go on to internships, and then we're going to have the rest of them eligible for jobs. And so they are looking specifically for restaurant jobs. If I understood your question, it was about the limit, any limitations. And so we're looking for restaurant jobs. They are getting qualified as food handlers as well as in hospitality, the federal hospitality certificate. And so there's absolutely no limit to the number of restaurant owners that we would invite. It would really be anyone who's interested in hiring a young person who's just starting out.
That's great. Thank you, Maya. If
Thank
there
you.
are any
Yeah.
other questions? Okay, so we'll move on to our next speaker. Thank you again.
Yes, of course. Thanks.
I see Moram from UMass is on. I'm not sure if he has a report or not, but I see his name on there. Moram Esposito. Espino, sorry.
Hey, Espino. Hey, guys. How you doing today? My name is Moira Espino. I'm representative of the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. I'm the Senior Business Development Officer over there. Haven't been by here in a while, so just coming by and seeing what's going on in the East Harlem neighborhood. If you guys know about the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, we've been around for a little while. As soon as I got on board, we were leading the initiative on the hybrid microloans, in which we had a program in which we lended out 50,000 at 3% with a 25% grant component. And I believe we're about to close that program now. It's sunsetted already, but we kind of in discussions to see if we're gonna extend it a little bit more unofficially. But stay tuned. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Moram. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, Moira.
Okay, my question is, have you funded any businesses, in East Harlem with that 50 grand?
Yeah, East Harlem was our most productive area. Everybody really, there was a lot of opportunity given over there. We probably did, from the top of my head, maybe close to 10 or 11 businesses over there. Some were Allison, My New York Bakery, Copycat, just to name a few.
That's great, that's awesome, that's really nice to hear. Thank you for that information. I'll open it up to any questions. Okay, seeing none, we hope to see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other business?
I don't see any, no.
Okay. So we will move on to our workforce development organizations that may have any updates for us. Okay. And any of the arts and culture organizations that have any updates?
Felix has his hand up, he's with, Lopaneros.
Okay, I'll recognize Felix.
Hello,
Hello, Felix.
good evening. How is everyone? I don't know if you can hear me.
We can.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for having me in the neighborhood. I'm working with La Fortaleza CDC. We're planning our next Festival of Books, Festival del Libro, to take place at the East Harlem Bilingual Head Start Program, 440 East 116th Street. We've had this event ongoing since 2013, and it's an event to promote bilingual literacy and literature by introducing local populations to bilingual authors, writers, and writing organizations. That's October 25th and 26th. Admission is free. We do welcome writers and literary organizations. We can be contacted at libros230books@gmail.com, and we'll reply. In between that, the La Fortaleza is working with the 100 Hispanic men on their, I think it's their 4th ongoing Father's Day cigar brunch. And that happens at Colon Plaza, Father's Day Sunday. My telephone number is 646-633-1790. In our contracted services, we have contracted youth chefs that were enrolled in a culinary arts program. Our last Hispanic Achievement Celebration in 2021 helped to maintain some of the losses that restaurants that participated with us would have otherwise incurred. We worked with La Fonda, Amor Cubano, and Bistro Casa Azul, and on average, they were able to save $300 a piece in catered food that people would walk into their restaurants to order, thanks to the open street permit, where admission events can be held in the streets that year. And so we took advantage of that. That's our update.
That's great news. Thank you, Felix, for that information. The Father's Day cigar brunch, is that something that you only host on Father's Day, or is that something that throughout the month you go to different locations and host?
No, right now it's just Colon Plaza Father's Day Sunday.
At Colon Plaza.
Okay, I wear different hats, and no, it's true. I work with other advocacy groups. I have worked with other advocacy groups. That's why one of them is who I registered under, the Julia de Burgos Arts Alliance. That was the group that submitted their proposal to manage the Julia's theater and multicultural space, room 103, back in 2010.
Okay. Thank you. And my last question for you would be, the literacy event that you're hosting,
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you mentioned the age group, is that open for children as well?
Oh, no, it's a 2-day event. The 25th is a Friday, the 26th is a Saturday. We do a weekday and a weekend to allow local schools to attend. So our writers are anywhere from children's picture book writers to adult audiences. We also have workshops and activities, for example, a hip hop writing workshop. We also, one of our participant writers is an author who wrote the book Tears of a Gangster. His name is Tony Valentine. He's a former OG himself, and he's using his experience and that of his generation to try to steer kids out of away from violence, gun violence in particular. So he has workshops about his experiences that he relates in his book, and also about the life that the teens today are undergoing or living through, and then make suggestions, recommendations, give them some kind of counseling. Well, not counseling, but advice, suggestions coming from someone who's lived that life. His name is Tony Valentine, Tears of a Gangster. We have our videos of past events, not just the Festival del Libro, but also the Hispanic Achievement Celebration. And I've personally been involved in other events and activities, among them the International Puerto Rican Heritage Film Festival, what else, the Caribbean Cultural Center. I don't know if they still do this, but they used to bring in a band from Cuba to play for a festival in Santeria and Piritismo. I don't know if they still do that, but I've worked with them. I've produced television shows. Voila.
Thank you so much, Felix.
You're
I
welcome.
feel like you should pay us a visit one time, because you have, it sounds like you have a lot of information that you can, pass on to the committee. So thank you for your time today. And if you.
Angel, let me know when I can stop by. Give me a date
Sure.
and time.
Sure, and if you can pass, your flyers or any information down to Angel, so he can, help distribute it, that would be helpful for us.
Will do.
Okay, great.
Gracias.
You're welcome. Next speaker, we have Cindy Sanabria. She's a film director, and she would like to speak to us today about a film that she is working on right here in El Barrio. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, hola. Thank you for having me, everyone. Thank you, Anne-Marie. I'm primarily a filmmaker that advocates for women of color in this industry because we lack diversity. And I particularly geared this project towards a genre that we're least represented. I'm talking about people of color in general, our community, even issues that go on within our people, within our community. So I made a holiday horror called Merciless Christmas. I wore the shirt today, so you guys could take a look at it if you got a little it's a little weird, but it deals with mental health, like a mental health decline into insanity after a traumatic event happened. This was a guy coming out of prison, trying to start a new life with his estranged family. And then something horrible, a tragedy befalls his family around the holidays, and it sends him down this spiraling whirlwind. It's like a revenge slasher holiday horror film. But what makes it most important is, one, that it's primarily 98% diverse. We have people that represent our community as well in the film, involved in the film, like professional boxer Hector Camacho Jr. As we know, like his father, we have Machito Square on 110. We have Apache Ramos from the Warriors, another Puerto Rican actor. We have a lot of like Puerto Rican and Black actors primarily, and mostly Latinos and Blacks coming together just to show tremendous talent, and to try to get this film into movie theaters. I feel like we lack representation in the industry as a whole. I'm a filmmaker in general, so after this film that I'm trying to finish, I will be embarking on another film about the Tainos and how they approach colonialism instead of the opposite story that we've always been told about Christopher Columbus. This is from the perspective of the actual Taino Indians. But I need to get through this film first. And unfortunately, last year when I tried to fundraise for it, I was unable to make my goal. My goal was 30,000 and I wasn't able to make that. I made half of that, so therefore I was able to only shoot half the film. So I was recently there in December, and Anne Marie is also featured in the film. She's one of the people that uh she did a great job, by the way. She played opposite Apache Ramos from the Warriors. And yeah, so because the character, he ends up in like a mental asylum, he has, you know, mental health issues. So that's how Borinquen Health Clinic got tied in to becoming one of our sponsors for a location, and we're very thankful for that. Unfortunately, we have another half of the film to go, and the only reason why it's costing us so much is because we have our actors, a big portion of them are SAG, and I don't know if you're familiar with everything that went on with SAG last year, but there was a huge strike, and it really caused, it's good for the actors for bigger film companies, but when it comes to independent companies like me or independent people just trying to make a film to get a message out, it makes it very hard. So in order to work with these actors like Hector Camacho, I have to pay SAG an extra fee, and I have to set money aside and adhere to certain guidelines in order just to get them in the film, or I won't be able to shoot with them. That being said, I do have a crowdfunder that's currently up and running on Indiegogo. The name of the film is called Merciless Christmas. As you can see, we launched that film. I launched that film campaign over a month ago, and this was just asking for a portion, which was just $10,000, and we've not even made it $500. In this industry, women are the least to get supported. Women are the least to get financially backed. So this has been an ongoing challenge for me as a creator, especially, you know, I was born and raised in Harlem. A lot of my films come from my experiences, my environment, lifting voices that aren't heard. This film has about 50 plus people involved, both in front and behind the camera, that are predominantly people of color. And it really helps to get them to the next place in their life, to the next journey, to the next, just so they can be the future Denzels and the future Jennifer Lopez's in Hollywood. You know, people that actually have talent are going unnoticed because, you know, people like us lack support. And so that's the reason why I was called in, and I'm asking for your help as well. We do have investment opportunities outside of the campaign where you can buy into the film and get your profit return once we sell the film, with a percentage attached to that. And that comes with a whole big bundle like premiere, and you know, if you donate as an organization, you would be featured, like advertised in our end credits, so the end credits could see our supporters. And you would also get that you know, premiere, because we plan to have like a red carpet premiere in theaters. And we'll get a bunch of stuff for you, for the people that donated. Everything from like signed autograph posters. I have movie t-shirts. I have dolls that have been made. So I've really put a lot of work into doing this film, and it could be done. I have a teaser trailer of the film. And it's part of the campaign as well. So if you go into Indiegogo.com and Merciless Christmas, you'll see that that's one of the first things that you'll see is the ability to play the trailer. So yeah, I thank you so much. On June the 14th, we plan to have our fundraising event for Taina, but we'll have more information on that in the future, because we're that film isn't happening to the end of this year, but the primary goal is to get this out so that way we can get a diverse film that represents Harlem, that because it doesn't just show the side of the story that white people depict when they write our stories, right? When they write about us. This comes from a perspective of a person that was born and raised in the projects, you know, a person that has seen, you know, people for what they are, not, you know, stereotyped community or a, you know, or a neighborhood based off of television or whatever. I want to be able to set the record straight. I want people to stop telling our stories that aren't us. I want to be able to step in line. And I've been filmmaking for over a decade. I have 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's in film from City College, and I have a video art, an associate's in video arts technology from the Borough of Manhattan Community College. I have been at this for over 10 years. And when I tell you, as a female and a female of color in this industry, I have had a lot of push instead of a lot of, you know, a lot of help. So I'm coming forward today to ask you guys to help me finish my film. If you can, I would appreciate it. And thank you so much for giving me your time.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you. I think I speak for everyone. We really felt what you want to put out in these movies. And the truth is that our communities do need a voice. And this is great to hear. I think that, so the only crowdfunder campaign that you have out is the Indiegogo.com. That's how people can go and check out what you're working on and donate to your campaign, correct?
I do have a website that we've been building up on, building a library. So it's called bloodstainedfilms.com. This is primarily just a horror website of things. There's another film that you'll see that's coming soon, and that's it's basically about human trafficking, and it's a bunch of Latinas. These are all my horror. A lot of it entails horrors of reality, and a lot of it entails horrors of reality within the Latino community, or, you know, that reflect us as women. I'm a female. I don't believe in exploiting women. I just finished a film that was quite difficult. That being said, I just made a I'm in post-production right now, meaning that it's in the editing room, about the first serial killer biopic. It's the first Black serial killer biopic. There has never been a Black serial killer film. And this guy has killed more people than Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, the Zodiac killer combined. His name is Samuel Little. He's a Black serial killer. He killed 93 women. And nobody's talking about it. Why? His victims were predominantly of color. You know, they were on the fringes of society. So I tend to take stories that people turn away from, and, you know, these are stories that should be told. These are, you know, but I'm not being supported properly, which is why my voice it can only carry but so far. You know?
Right, so the Indiegogo.com is where people can go to support your
The campaign. Yes, for Merciless Christmas, yes.
Oh, okay, great. And I do invite you to, because I feel like this ties in a lot. You speak a lot about mental health and all that stuff, and we have other committees that do a lot closer work with mental health issues, and I definitely invite you to present to our health and human services. Not just as a, you know, obviously to help your campaign, but also to bring awareness. Because these are ongoing issues.
Yes, absolutely. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. I'll open it up for any questions that the committee members may have for Cindy. Okay, seeing none. Cindy, please send us your flyer, or, you know, just your information in general so that we can better support you. Please send it to Angel.
Okay.
The same, send you the link.
I know I had to go around like loops to find it. I actually scanned the QR code that Anne-Marie got. I didn't receive the email for some reason.
Okay, so you know what, we'll have Angel possibly maybe send another email so that, just to make sure you get some type of form of communication with us, and you can reply to that.
Okay, thank you. I can put my email in the chat box if that's easier for him. Is that okay for you, Angel? I don't know.
Yeah, I
his-
just put my email. I beat you to it. So go in the chat. Mike.
Oh, okay.
Best of luck, Cindy.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Oh, it was the M that was missing. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. We are going to move on to our presentations and discussions. Angel, quick question, is Reggie on or not yet?
Sorry, I was being interrupted by Christina.
Sorry.
I don't see right now.
I just. Okay, is,
You have it on that.
I think we should, yeah. He's been very patient. He was here before we were. So let's hear from an informational presentation on legal aid services, a launch of a virtual clinic by Rolando Gonzalez from Legal Aid.
So good evening, and thank you, Community Board 11, for this opportunity to speak with you and to talk about our services. As you know, Legal Aid provides a wide range of different services, mostly housing on the civil part, immigration, criminal. But I'm here to talk about, I'm one of the attorneys in the Community Development Project. And you might have heard something about it from Jason, who's on the Community Board and on your committee. So I want to talk a little bit about what we do, a little bit about what we're just launching. We provide free legal services to small businesses and nonprofit organizations. And we do everything from helping someone who has an idea, wants to start a business, but doesn't know whether they should be a sole proprietor, corporation, partnership, or an LLC. We go through the pros and cons. We help people form the businesses if they're eligible for our services. We work a lot with immigrants. Most of my clients are immigrants. People who have ITIN. So a lot of people don't know that if you have an ITIN, you can still legally have a business. That doesn't impact your immigration status, but you can still hold the business. You just cannot be employed. So you can't be an employee, you can't get certain benefits, but you can have a business, you can have employees. You can own pretty much almost any type of business other than, I think you can get most licenses except for a liquor license. So we work a lot with immigrants. We do a lot of commercial leasing, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. We do a lot of contracts, we do contracts review. One of the big issues that I see with a lot of small business owners, especially in this community, is that they go to someone to have, for example, a corporation or a limited liability company formed. And the person they go to doesn't necessarily form them correctly. What they do is they go online, they go to the Department of State, and they file either the articles of organization or certificate of incorporation. And then that's all they do. And they charge them a lot of money. They charge them money to get an EIN, which is free. The important part is that once they form a corporation or limited liability company, the next steps are, if it's a corporation, they have to have shares, otherwise they're not owners. They have to have bylaws. They have to have an initial meeting of a board where they set the number of board members, where they basically set who the corporate officers are. And then every year, there's certain things that they have to do. So they have to, for example, have an annual meeting. Even if it's only one person, they still have to go through the steps of having their meetings, making sure they elect themselves as the sole board of director, making sure they keep minutes of these meetings, making sure that any major actions are done by the board of directors, even if it's one person. I rarely see this because people go and sometimes they go to sort of the accountant, who's someone who basically just sort of once again files this and doesn't tell them what they need to know, what they need to do. Now, it's important because when you form a corporation or limited liability company, just by filing with the Department of State, the document you file does not say who the owner is, it only says who the organizer is. So if you don't take these following steps, then you're not really the owner. And you also lose personal liability. This came up a lot during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, there were a lot of businesses that fell behind in rent arrears. And some thought, I'm in a corporation or I'm an LLC, I'm safe. And they were surprised to get letters from attorneys from the landlords basically saying, if we have to go after you, we're gonna check to see if you're actually following the corporate rules. And if you're not following the corporate rules, we can go and get after your personal assets. So for example, once again, if you're a corporation and you have the lease in the corporate name, but you're not following the corporate rules, you could still be held personally liable, even though you have a corporation or an LLC. And a lot of times, this is not explained to a lot of the business owners who start businesses. And at the same time, after they start a business, I've seen people who are like in 10, 20 years in business and never had a board of director meeting as a corporation. Never issued shares. And the problem is, things can be fine until or if they get sued. And if they get sued, then they have a problem. So a lot of that is educating business owners on what they need, what's important. That's what we do a lot of community education workshops, but helping people who actually, and this comes up a lot with us because we work a lot with small business services. And when they need a loan or when they're applying to be a minority business owned certified, they have to provide, for example, the bylaws. Or if it's an LLC, they have to provide an operating agreement because the operating agreement for LLC shows who the owners are. And it shows the percentage. And for example, if they're trying to be certified as a minority owned business, they have to show they're at least 51% owned. And a lot of times the small businesses don't have these documents because they weren't properly created. So we can help with those issues. We can help them with setting up how they need to actually, for example, conduct their initial meetings or their board of director meetings or their annual shareholder meetings. I said commercial leasing. We work with, we advise on intellectual property. We don't do IP, but we can advise someone on whether they need to trademark or they need to copyright. A lot of times small business owners want to sort of immediately trademark even before they register the business. And for a lot of businesses, that's probably not the best thing. They can probably wait. Employment issues, one of the major issues I see with employment issues is that they want to classify everyone as an independent contractor, when a lot of times they're not, they're employees. So if you classify someone as an independent contractor and things might be fine until that person leaves. And once that person leaves, sometimes they will go to the government and complain, or they will go and get an attorney and sue. And for some reason, similar to personal injury, that's something that people can get attorneys for without putting up any money. Because generally, if there's an existing business, the thought is that there's money there. So if we sue, if we contact them, there's gonna be at least some type of money there to settle. So misclassification of employees is one of the biggest issues that we see. We help people with permits, licenses, at least understanding what it is that they need. So we do a little bit of everything. We don't do litigation. But if someone, I've spoken because I've done litigation in the past, especially commercial litigation, if someone gets a notice, for example, a 14-day notice, if they get an eviction notice, that's something we can review and tell them what the next steps are. And the big one is a lot of times in order for when tenants fall behind, the first thing they'll get is a 14-day notice that says if you don't pay within 14 days, you need to leave the space, which is not true. The landlord has to take certain steps. The landlord cannot evict the tenant, only the court can evict the tenant. Now, if they don't answer the court papers, then it's easy to be evicted, but generally there's a step. They get a notice first. If they don't respond, if they don't come to an agreement, then the next step is getting a court date, and then you go through the court process. So they can't lock you out, they can't sort of just evict you. And a lot of times it's a matter of explaining to business owners, this is what the process is, this is what you need to do, this is what you can do. In the meantime, if tenants, commercial tenants have a rent arrears, it's good to explain that more often than not, it's best not to wait till things get out of hand. Because if the landlord has to sue you, certain things happen. If you're a corporation or limited liability company, you can't go into court and stop, and you can't go into court and answer without actually having an attorney present. And for a lot of tenants, commercial tenants, if they fall behind in rent, they're not gonna be able to afford an attorney. And it's also not gonna help them for, getting an attorney, because most leases have the clause that says that the obligation to pay rent is independent of any obligation that the landlord has to do anything. So if you haven't paid the rent, you're in arrears and you get sued, you may not be able to answer in court, which can lead to the eviction. The second thing is most leases say that typically the commercial tenants have to pay for the landlord's attorney's fees and all their fees. So now not only do you have to hire an attorney, but you also have to go out and pay for the landlord's attorney who's trying to evict you. And the third thing is, more often than not, it's a lot easier to speak to the landlord, especially if you have a good relationship, rather than trying to have two attorneys speak, when at that point, the attorneys are getting paid, and it's not in their best interest to end the case quickly. So a lot of times, if a tenant is in arrears, it makes sense to be able to get assistance. For commercial tenants, it makes sense to also seek assistance before they actually rent a space. And the reason is because a lot of the problems that tenants get into can be resolved if they negotiate properly the commercial lease. And the reason is with commercial leasing, all of the tenants' rights, all the landlord's obligations have to be in the lease. There is very little, if any, rights outside of what is in the contract. So a lot of the issues that tenants get into, not having a renewal lease at the, once their lease expires. If you don't have it in the contract, the landlord doesn't have to renew your lease. Not knowing that rent includes additional rent, which is not that amount on the first page, but it's all this other rent that's in there. Real estate taxes, all these other fees that are in there. Repairs, not knowing that if the repair is not listed in the contract, landlord has no obligation. So I get calls all the time from people, landlord's harassing me, the landlord doesn't want to make this repair, it's leaking, and I look at the lease, and the lease says nothing about repairs. I remember having a few years ago, one of, someone actually from East Harlem, who had entered into a lease in the summer, and was surprised in December that there was no heat. And the landlord wasn't providing heat, only to look at the lease, and the lease clearly said it was the landlord's responsibility to provide, it was the tenant's responsibility to provide heat and their own hot water. So there are no rights other than what's in the lease. And that's why sort of being able to speak to someone before, just being able to speak to an attorney before entering into a lease can be very useful. Because a lot of times, things that they need that they realize later on are not in the lease. So we also do a lot of community education work. So we do a lot of workshops. We did one with Community Board 11 during the pandemic a few years ago. But I do a lot of them mostly on commercial leasing, also on entity formation. One of the big issues now also with a lot of small businesses is educating them on the new law, the Corporate Transparency Act, where basically if you have a corporation or limited liability company, you have, if you are formed before the beginning of this year, you have a year to comply and to provide certain information to the US Department of Treasury. But if you form a corporation or an LLC at, after the first of this, January 1st of 2024, you only have 90 days to comply. And if you form it after January 1st, 2025, you're gonna have 30 days to comply. So a lot of it is getting in, trying to reach out to business owners, letting them know you have this obligation. If you don't comply, the laws are fairly strict. It says you can be fined up to $500 a day while you're not complying with providing this information. So the other part is that I'm here to talk about, we just are launching, I think our first day is, it's gonna be tomorrow, we're launching a legal clinic. So typically if a small business owner wanted to get legal assistance, they would contact us and then they would go through the sort of process. Beginning this month, the third Wednesday of every month, we will have a legal clinic where whether you're starting a business, whether you're in a business and you have legal issues, you can contact us. You'll get between a 30 or 45-minute slot. And you'll speak to one of us, and we can, there'll be follow-up if there needs to be follow-up. So you have the flyers there. This month, tomorrow's clinic is already full, but we have another clinic next month. If the clinics also fill up, you can also contact us. Our number is on the other sheet. And we are happy to, one of the attorneys is happy to speak to any business owner on any issue. Finally, the last thing, I know we had originally said, Jason told me to keep it short. Commercial, we are in a coalition that is trying to get commercial rent stabilization in the city. In the past, that has been brought up to the city council. It has not been successful. We're looking to bring it up again. So this is something that we've been on. It hasn't passed. It's probably gonna be difficult to pass, but we're not going to, we're gonna continue trying to get it passed. That's one of the big issues. The other big issue, which we thought about looking at legislation, is that with commercial landlord tenant, it's a lot different than residential in the sense that if you're in a residential apartment and you leave, the landlord has to make every effort to try to rent that apartment. And if they rent that apartment, then the tenant, even if they left, if you're in a 2-year lease and you leave after 2 months, you're on the hook for the remainder of that term. But if the landlord gets someone else and they have to make an effort to get someone else, then the tenant no longer is responsible. But with commercial leasing, it's not that, that's not the case. So with commercial leasing, if you're in a 10-year lease and you end up being evicted after year 4, depending on who the owner is, who the tenant is, ideally would be a corporation or limited liability company, but a lot of times people end up signing leases in their own name. And even when they sign as a corporation or an LLC, they are guaranteeing the lease. So the landlord can go after them. The landlord can go after them for the remainder of the lease term. So even if you were only in the space for 4 years and there's 10 years, the landlord can go after for the amount for the 6 years that are remaining. Sometimes there's what's called an acceleration clause, which means that the landlord can basically request all of that rent immediately. But also at the same time, the landlord doesn't have to rent the space. The landlord can basically sit back and just try to collect from the tenant who was in that space. So one of the things we've discussed is basically reaching out and trying to sort of see if there's legislation as well on basically having sort of similar to residential, having a law that basically requires a landlord, if the tenant vacates the space, that the landlord has to try to rent it and make efforts to rent it. So thank you once again for inviting me and for giving me this opportunity to discuss what we do.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have a question. You said if a person just is evicted from the space, right? The landlord still has the option to collect that money from that tenant, right?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, what if the tenant just leaves?
That's the worst that they can do.
Right, okay, so say they have the 10-year lease, right, and they did 4 and then they left, right? Does the owner or landlord have the option to collect all of that money at once?
So typically, what should happen is that rent is collectible collected when it becomes due. So for example, if someone were to get evicted in March, typically the landlord would have to collect April's rent in April, May's and so forth. Unless there's a clause that says that all the rent gets accelerated and it all becomes due immediately.
Okay.
So depending on what the clause is, depending if there's that clause, otherwise the landlord would have to wait until each month comes in order to collect it. Now, regarding someone abandoning it, that's the worst thing they could do for this reason. Even if you owe rent, you still have a little bit of leverage for this reason. The landlord has to go to court to get you out. It's gonna cost the landlord money. it's gonna take the landlord time to get you out. Meanwhile, you're still accruing rent arrears.
Mhm.
So if you're in a space and you can't pay and you're falling behind in rent arrears, the best thing to do is try to negotiate with the landlord a surrender where you give up the space and the landlord basically cuts the amount you owe or basically agrees not to go after you for the amount you owe. Once you leave, you have no leverage. If you leave, then the landlord can't come after you. While you're still in there, you have a little bit of leverage, and that hopefully the landlord, you're gonna save the landlord money by being able to give up the space. And make it easier for the landlord to then basically re-rent the space rather than spending a few months in court.
Okay, that's confusing, but, okay, so, but technically, this person does not owe rent, right? They don't owe rent, they just left, right? And pretty much are holding the space hostage. So they're continuing to pay the rent, but not release, they've left. They don't wanna release this space so that it can be re-rented to a new tenant.
If they're paying the rent, then the landlord can't do anything, because as long as the rent's being paid, the landlord, it's if the person's not paying the rent, that the landlord can then move forward. Now, there might be a clause, some leases will have a clause that says if the tenant abandons the space, then the landlord can come in and start proceedings to evict them. Because a lot of times landlords don't want, like, if they have a list, a number of spaces, they don't want to have an empty space because it's not good for business. So if that clause is in there, then the landlord can actually go after the tenant, even if they're paying the rent. Because they're breaching the lease if there's a clause that says that they have to be in the space. I mean, some leases go as far as saying you have to be in the space 7 hours a day, 6 days a week. And if you're paying your rent, but you're not complying with that, that's a reason for the landlord to go after the tenant.
Thank you.
Hi, yes.
How are you funded?
So we are funded, that's a great question, because our specific project is not funded, but we get funding from the government and from private sources.
Okay.
Like law firms will donate money to us, but a lot of our money comes from the government.
So the government is supporting you because they're expecting that you will represent people who otherwise would not have legal.
Well, they're funding most of our other projects. Our specific unit is not funded. So we come out of the general funds from legal aid, but we have, for example, our housing unit gets funded mostly from the city. We have, the criminal work, which is, most of the attorneys are either criminal or, housing. They get funding mostly from the city and the state.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Polanco, the clinics are online or in person?
They're virtual.
Okay.
But remember, even if someone, like, for example, I was having this conversation with someone today about, this clinic already, all the spots are, filled. And the next one is like 30 days away, but if someone has a pressing need, if they don't wanna wait, they could just call in. They'll be able to get a one-on-one with us, anyway, they just won't be in the clinic, well. Yes,
And are the clinics for anyone in the business development process? So
Mhm.
even if you just have a business idea
yes,
and a plan,
yes.
that would be appropriate.
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I do have a question, comment. I think, so I'm not sure if you guys offer like, anything related to this, but it would be very important, I think, if you don't, service that exactly. I feel like there is a lack of, financial literacy, especially in our community. So along with like having a great idea and opening up a business and doing, everything that comes with the corporation correctly, it's once you open the business, what to do with that money, right? Make sure you're allocating like the correct, you're taking out the correct taxes, you're providing for yourself, for your family, the correct type of plans in place so that God forbid anything happens to you. Because as entrepreneurs, we kind of leave ourselves as last. So if you're a chef and, your hand, and you can't be a chef anymore, it's like, so making sure that you are, providing for these new entrepreneurs or maybe people who have already been in the business for years, providing for them financial literacy so that they can set themselves up for success even after they've, you know, left behind their entrepreneurship or sold their business, maybe passing it down to their kids, making sure that certain things are put in place so that when they do decide to retire or have an early retirement, that they kind of did things the right way. I think that's just equally as important as like providing those services to make sure that their business is structured correctly. I don't know if you guys offer that, but that would be something I think good to, you know, as an addition.
So we don't, I've actually spoken to SPS about sort of doing something, not along the lines of something with the financial, with the small business work, for the reason that for small businesses to grow, they need to keep a lot of these records and they need to do this. And one of the comments that I get all the time is that in this community, upper Washington Heights, what you see is a lot of people who end up with like, when they keep their records, they show losses. And the problem is, they're showing losses year after year after year, and then they try to get a loan, and who's gonna give them a loan when you show 20 years of losses? And in order to grow, a lot of times businesses need to get a loan in order for the business to get to that next level. But it's hard to get a loan when your records show that you're not making any money. And it's sort of short-sighted. But that's I've discussed sort of having that conversation along with how to some of what you've already said. So it's something we probably wouldn't do, but it's something that we would do with another organization. So that's a great idea.
Right, and maybe bringing those services, because we have libraries opening up soon, remodeled, renovated. And you guys can host it, and we would, as a committee, we would love to be a part of that. If you can, like, in collaboration with someone else and CB11, we would love to bring maybe like a workshop to the library, a place where like everyone can gather, or it's kind of like how your legal clinics go. So thank you for your time. April, you have another question? No. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
We're running a little long, but Felix has a question.
Okay, great. I'll recognize Felix.
Felix, you're on. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, we'll move on. If Felix has a question later on, he can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. We can move on to our status update and discussion of community concerns regarding the Julia de Burgos Cultural Center and La Marqueta by Fernando Ortiz from NYC. Hi, Fernando.
Hello, good evening. Oh, I look blue in this lighting. Hold on. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Let me just find the tab and here we go. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, could you maximize it, Fernando, so we can see a little better?
Yes, there we go. Can you see it better there?
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for having me today. My name is Fernando Ortiz. I am an assistant vice president for government and community relations, and I oversee the Upper Manhattan and Bronx portfolio. So East Harlem is within my purview. And so today wanted to just give a quick update on the Julia de Burgos Latino Cultural Center, also known as 1680 Lexington. So I'll dive right into the presentation. So as you all might be familiar, it is a 5-story building, which part of the building is leased to the Department of Education, the Heritage School, and multiple nonprofits. It's located at 1680 Lexington, and it is between 105th and 106th Street. It is a 60,000 square foot 5-story building. It is a landmarked building, and the building has been occupied or under the management of EDC since 1992, with the goal of providing space for arts and cultural organizations to have space as tenants here. And the space also includes a theater space, which has been highly used. So just a little bit of the history of the building for those who might not be as familiar. It was built in 1879 as a public school. In 1975, the school was closed by the Board of Education. And in 1992, the building was approved for disposition for nonprofit cultural and educational uses. So since 1992, EDC has been managing this building. However, we do understand that the best agency to administer this building should be the Department of Cultural Affairs. However, while the Department of Education has a public school in the building, DCLA will not take the building over. And so I know there's, a whole issue, let's say, for lack of a better word, around the Heritage School having a presence in the building. And a lot of you might be familiar with the Heritage School. They were supposed to be in another development project, and that project has been significantly stalled and delayed, and so they were put into this building. The goal is that eventually they will have their own building, but for the time being, they continue to be a tenant. So just to give you a sense of other tenants, I mentioned the Heritage School, which serves more than 300 students in the neighborhood, and they pay for about 48% of the total building operating expense. So they do, pay to be there. We also have Los Pleneros de la 21 as a tenant, as well as Puerto Rican Workshop. I believe Taller Boricua is still in the building, or they might have left, but I have to double confirm that. So that's just to give you a sense of some of the tenants that we have. A former tenant of the building was the Hispanic Federation, and they were managing and occupying the theater space at the Julia de Burgos Center, but they, as of end of last year, are no longer in the building. So I wanted to just highlight some current projects that we have going on at the Julia. So we will be having some construction for a certificate of occupancy. So a second means of egress on the 5th floor is required in order to obtain the certificate of occupancy. So you can kind of see here in the floor plan that the Heritage School will be losing some space due to this additional stairwell that needs to be installed. And so that kind of gives you a sense of where that space is going to be just in terms of the building. And then there are 10.3 million in capital funds for renovating the exterior. That includes new windows and some facade repairs. A sidewalk shed will be in place. And we have been in conversations with the construction management team to have some public art installations on the shed or on the fencing while the construction work is happening, so to make it more attractive. And that came out of a town hall that we had last month in February, requested by Council Member Diana Ayala. We held a town hall at the Julia de Burgos where we shared the same presentation. One of the recommendations that we heard with this exterior improvements was that there should be an opportunity for public art. So we are following up on that. And once we have more to share, we'll let the community board know so that we can do a call for artists for that artwork. We are submitting a certificate to proceed with that work now in the spring. We hope to, in the fall, commence design and start construction in the winter. Something else that came out of the town hall when we shared this slide was that there are a lot of local architects who have previously worked on the building and who would be interested in working in this capital project. So we have also been reaching out and in touch with those individuals to bring them as part of the team, to ensure that some of this work goes to local design and architectural firms. Some identified needs that we understand are needed at the Julia. So the first thing is, with the Hispanic Federation having left the building, there is about 8,000 square feet of office space and theater space that is currently vacant as of 2023. Right now, any request to use the theater space has to come directly to EDC. So you can contact me, and I have my contact at the end of the presentation. I'll put it in the chat. we have to kind of get a permit from the city to allow the use. We currently are working with Los Pleneros de la 21 who want to host some events in June. We are also working with oh, her name escapes me, El Barrio Theater Group or production, who wants to put on a play the month of June. And we are also working with, I believe, Boundless, who has formerly done kind of theater production and youth education on the site. So we're working with those three at least up until the end of July, so that this theater space is not just vacant, but that local community folks have access and can use that space. But any request to use the theater space as of now has to come directly to EDC, and then we'll process that request as they come in. A second need and thing that we're working on is theater improvements. So we do understand that the theater has some upgrades that need to be done, including lighting and AV, dressing room upgrades. There needs to be repairs to the floor, the beams, some of the walls, new seating platforms. So those are all needs that we have identified. There was previously an attempt to have capital funding allocated to the theater. However, OMB designated that it was not feasible because they wanted the seating to be mounted into the floor, which we understand is not the best use for that theater space, right? We don't want permanent seating. We wanted seating that is flexible, that can be moved. So that has been an ongoing battle with OMB, but something that we're trying to resolve. And then just in terms of next space for the Julia, we want to ensure that whatever future tenant comes into the building aligns with the community's needs and vision. So we will be putting out a survey in the summer, early fall, and hosting a workshop and having more conversations with the community about what their vision for the Julia is and what kind of tenants they want to have in the Julia moving forward. And following that, we will take that feedback and put it into a future request for proposal, which is an RFP, to help find a new tenant and operator for the theater space. So we really want to make sure that the community is able to provide input into that RFP so that we are able to find a new tenant and operator for that space that aligns with the vision for the Julia and the community. So I think that's the last slide before I get into my contact information. So I'll leave it there and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you for the presentation. I think you cleared up a lot of our questions that we had prior to having this conversation with you. So to my understanding, EDC manages any and all tenants at the moment at Julia de Burgos, including Hispanic Federation, Hispanic Heritage Left. It would be the Planeros and the other group that you mentioned, besides the school, correct?
So we are basically the landlords for the building, right? The building is owned by the city. We manage this property on behalf of the city. So we're, basically the landlord. So yeah, so any space that is available, we would have to tenant that out, and we do that through an RFP. So we have direct leases with the Planero, the Heritage School, and all the other tenants in the building, and future tenants, yes.
Okay, and because you mentioned that DCLA won't take the building over until the school leaves, but they should be the ones managing the building, is that what you said?
Yes. So
Oh.
There was a previous, in past conversations, there was an agreement from DCLA to eventually take over this building, right? Because this is meant to be an arts and cultural center, right? This is not meant to be, EDC is in the business of economic development, right? It's in our name. And this is not a space where we necessarily see huge economic development, right? This is meant to be an incubator for arts and culture and education. So we typically don't manage these kinds of assets. This is an arts and cultural center. It should be managed by the Cultural Affairs Department. But because the Heritage School, which is a public school, is in the building, DCLA does not have the capacity to manage these kinds of assets, right? And so until the Heritage School is not out of the building, DCLA will not take over the building. We do want to kind of get confirmation from DCLA that still stands because with all the budget cuts and all, everything that's happening, we want to make sure that they are sticking to that once the Heritage School is out of the building, that they will take over the management of this property and really help to transform this into a arts and cultural center for East Harlem. But in the meantime, EDC is trying to do the best that we can. This is not an asset that we at all make any money off of. On the contrary, we actually, are in a deficit. Every year we lose money maintaining this property, and could we make money? Sure, but that would not align with the vision that the community has, right? It would not mean, if we were to make money, quote unquote, off of this asset, we would have to charge very high rents, which is not what the community wants and what we want to do, right? So in order to keep this space affordable and really true to what the culture wants, and being an arts and cultural organization, it needs to go to eventually to DCLA. So we have no problem losing money in the meantime on this asset, as long as we are, ensuring that the tenants are happy as best as we can, and bringing in future tenants that align with what the community wants.
Great, because the community does feel strongly about this being a cultural center. I mean, I'm sure that having, the school there is great too, provides a space for our children. But we are experiencing like an underutilization of not just arts in general, but like theater activation, which does tie into economic development and bringing, money into the community and keeping it local. So that being said, my last question would be the school, and I'm not sure if you can give information to this, but the school is on a month-to-month lease, or do they have like a long lease left?
I can double check. I don't think that they are on a long-term lease. I think it's kind of a year-to-year lease, right? Like we can't tell the school in January that they have to leave, right? We would have to wait to the next school year. So I think they're kind of like on a year-to-year basis that they renew. So not month to month, because DOE would never do that, because we can't evict a school in the middle of a calendar year. But they are kind of on a calendar year basis. And one of the requests that we've heard from DOE is that they would want to use the space during school hours for programming for the youth. And so we're also trying to see if we can accommodate that, right, as well, right? We're allowing DOE on certain hours, on certain days, to have access to the theater so that they can offer that programming and use and activate that space during the day.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, I thank you for the presentation. I have a question, because it seems as if you're saying that having a school in there is not actually part of the mission of being an art and cultural space. Even though you keep mentioning educational opportunities, my interpretation is educational opportunities for the community at large about art, not a school. Am I right to say that the having a school in this space is actually counter to the mission of the space?
Yeah, so when the main programming that was envisioned for this building was arts and culture. And within arts and culture, there is education, right? There's programming, learning to dance bomba. There's a lot of forms education can have within arts and culture. But this was not, it was not, the building was not meant or envisioned when, to be a school again, right? And so, and even the Heritage School right now, they need more space, right? It's very cramped for the students. So we understand, and I think everyone agrees that the Heritage School needs a new space. They need a new building, and they were promised that in a development, elsewhere. And so everyone's trying to make, people accommodated. But ultimately, this space should be, the vision for the Julia de Burgos was that the tenants are all nonprofits, right, in the arts culture. And if they offer educational programming as part of their mission, that's fine. But I don't think this building was meant to be a public school again.
So when was the Heritage School given access to the space? How long ago was that?
5 years ago? Oh, wow.
It's been a while. I don't know the exact year, and I can get that for you. I would say probably like 2010, 2012, if I had to guess, somewhere around that time period, if not.
Over 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know who promised them their space that they didn't get, but shouldn't that agency or organization at this point be held responsible for living up to that? Because it seems to me as if the cultural center mission has been subsumed by being taught, trying to help out a school that should have been somewhere else, and it's now well over 10 years. That
Yeah.
seems like an awfully generous act of rescue, for having over a decade, and I'm not hearing any timeline for their departure.
Yeah, that's right. And I forget the exact development. It was a private development, so they were supposed to be, I don't know if it was the Avalon or which one, but they were supposed to be in a private development. There was a whole issue there, which I'm not too familiar with. And so I'm not sure who decided to place the Heritage School here, but they're there, right? And so again, the vision is always that this was going to be a temporary solution. And I know that there's been complications with that other development. And I think we're now looking at other sites, even within some EDC sites that we have along 125th Street, but some people don't want the school to move to 125th Street. So we're trying to help find another alternative. But yes, we totally understand and hear that the school's presence here is not aligned fully with the vision that people have to for the Julia, and that has stalled what the Julia can fully in its full potential be. So
Angel, I'm sorry, Mark, I'm just gonna recognize Angel quickly, and then I'll
Oh, go
get
ahead.
back to you.
Sure, so three things, one, to rescue Fernando, so I don't know when the heritage was first put in, but if I'm hearing Fernando the right way, correctly, more recently, there was a project approved by this board, a mixed-use project that would have resulted in the construction of 2 school buildings, one of which would have housed, Heritage High School and Central Park East High School. That project has stalled, that was in 2017. There was a number of lawsuits because of stuff guys don't care about in this committee. But that stalled out. The agency responsible currently is the Educational Construction Fund. It's an offshoot of SCA and Department of Education. And they're, the last time we spoke to them in the process of trying to find either to resolve the problem the project that is stalled, or find alternate locations for those 2 schools. So for right now, we don't have an answer on that. A final answer on that. So then now my 2 questions. For Fernando, when EDC is eventually crafting the next RFP, will DCLA be a participant in the crafting of that RFP?
I'm not sure. We don't typically, do that with DCLA. What we would, I mean, they could be, right? So what we would invite them to all of the conversations that we have with the community and kind of consider them a stakeholder. But they would not necessarily help us craft the RFP, right? Because, potentially, I guess it could fall, I don't know, maybe DCLA wants to respond, or I don't know, right? But we don't typically share the RFPs with other agencies in that capacity. We would encourage them to come in and we would probably have a sit down with them one-to-one to understand like what long-term, what kind of tenant they would want in the building, or, but as it stands, since this is an EDC asset, we would not necessarily craft the RFP with them, but we would encourage them to participate in conversations. So to give some context to that, later this month, I have a site visit with my president, Andrew Kimball, the council member, and the DCLA commissioner to talk about the building, right? So we will be working closely with DCLA, but I don't know if they would necessarily help to craft the RFP per se.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And then my other question is with regards to the RFP will be issued at some point soonish, whatever that means. But likely before the Heritage School has relocated. So if that's the case, then the RFP will identify an operator that will be operating the spaces that are available currently with the vision, am I correct in this, that they would also have the capacity to manage the entire building once the heritage has been able to leave.
I mean, that is something that if the community wants us to find a tenant that could not only manage the theater space and some classroom space, but that eventually can manage the whole building, that could be something that could be integrated into the RFP, right? And those would be the kind of conversations and things that we would want to hear in the early fall, right? Before we craft the RFP, because right now we're thinking kind of finding a tenant who wants to occupy and operate the theater and some classroom space associated with it, so the 8,000 square feet. But maybe it could be a tenant who could manage the whole building. Or, right, maybe it's not that. Maybe the Julia de Burgos want to form, all the tenants come together and form a tenant association and they manage as a collective the building, right? We've seen a lot of different ways in which this can operate. So, but these are the kind of conversations that we'll start to have in the fall with the community, because we don't want to think just small scale, right? Because we don't know when DCLA will take over the building, or we don't know when DOE will leave the building. So we want to make sure that we're not just thinking short term, but thinking long term, right?
Thanks, Fernando, appreciate it.
That makes sense. Any other questions, Mark?
I just want to turn it back to the theater for a second, because I think Angel's point is a great one, right? If you're looking for an RFP for a theater company to come manage the theater space, but eventually it's going to be more than theater space, you're either potentially going to limit the people who are going to actually respond to the RFP, or you're gonna have people who don't want to because the space isn't significant enough. But my question is, in 22 and 23, what percentage of the year do you think there were actually productions in that theater?
22, 23, I don't know, because the space was being managed by Hispanic Federation, right? So I don't know. I can see if my asset management team has that information. But since we weren't direct, we rented it out to, we had a lease with Hispanic Federation, and they were managing their space however they were managing it, or tenanting it, subleasing it or allowing access however they wanted to. So I don't have that direct information for 22, 23.
So if an organization is renting the space with the intent of providing cultural opportunities for the neighborhood, but are not actually presenting those cultural opportunities to the neighborhood, you're saying as the landlord, you don't have a role in that?
I'm not sure how the last lease with Hispanic Federation was laid out, right? And I can try to find that details, because a lot of times in our leases, there might be leases where we're just like, okay, we put out a little RFP. I believe that they were, in their lease, they were mandated to have done that, right? But I don't know how we penalize them, right, for not having complied with that, right? I think it's one of those things like we encourage you to, and we expect you to do this, but when they don't do it, I don't know exactly what the penalization process for that is, right? One of the things is like, okay, we won't renew your lease when your lease is up, and so we're gonna get you out because you're not being the tenant that you said you were gonna be, right? But other than that, I don't know if like we, how we would penalize that. But that's why we want to ensure in this RFP that we ensure when we get, because after the RFP will come the lease, right? And so in those lease negotiations, we want to ensure that, whether it's more stronger enforcement of those things, having learned lessons from having the Hispanic Federation. Again, EDC is not typically in the business of leasing space to arts and cultural organizations. So this has definitely been a kind of, not experiment, but a learning process for us. So I think we've learned lessons from having Hispanic Federation in the building, and, and moving forward as we find a new tenant, we'll do things a little different.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to the last question from Angel.
Just a time check, we're at almost 8:30, but you have a question from Felix Lopez.
Okay, Felix, I recognize your hand.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. The heritage was brought in before the year 2000 to be what's an anchor tenant, because the original community of the collective of arts activists and organizers did not qualify to occupy space under EDC's regulations. So they needed an anchor, and that was the school. The Hispanic Federation took over the school after an RFEI that was usurped, where the Hispanic Federation was given management of the school without being a tenant or a partner in the collective that submitted the proposal, and that's the Julia de Burgos Arts Alliance. Since they've taken over the spaces, and it's not just the theater, it's room 103, or what's called the multicultural space, that is the large room behind the security offices. And there are 2 classroom-sized rooms behind them. The place has not been in use. They have spent $10,000, correct me if I'm wrong, Fernando, $10,000 a month, which is $120,000 a year, which in 14 years under their management is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3 million, but no revenue has come in. This, despite the fact that the members of the alliance invited the Hispanic Federation to be a fiscal conduit and technical assistance provider, was given the proposal, and each of those members of that alliance were event planners. In that group were concert planners at the La Marqueta, also Puerto Rican cultural folk performances and festivals that were held right on the intersection of 106th Street and Lexington Avenue. This not to mention that there were also, the theater was in use that presented theatrical monologues, stand-up comedy, live music, and the use of the multicultural space on the first floor for gala fundraising events, where 300 people paid $100 a plate to enjoy 7 different restaurants and have a multi-genre live arts entertainment that included the exhibition, the current exhibition at that time in the Taller Boricua. There was a plan that was submitted by the Arts Alliance. Why has that not been looked at and implemented? Because the premise of that plan was to give the space use. You give the space use, you can charge admission fee, you can charge registration fees, you can get revenue. But that under the Hispanic Federation, for all its experience, was never done. So why not revisit the original plan? And for those of that alliance who still have that vision, who still have that capacity to implement the plan.
Yeah, so I mean, that was something that we heard at the workshop as well. Not the workshop, at the town hall that we had last month. So, you know, we definitely, again, in the fall, we intend to have these conversations, right? If that's what folks want, then, you know, then that's what we'll look at, right? So I think we want to ensure, we want to talk about the lessons learned and the best practices and what worked and what hasn't worked. And really, you know, and maybe it's revisiting this plan and adding things to it. But, you know, we want to ensure that there's community engagement, right? That people have the opportunity to voice new ideas, to talk about, you know, bring up this plan. So we are definitely open to those conversations. And we don't just want to say, okay, we're going to go back to this plan that was created back then, right? We want to make sure we ask people, is this still what the community wants? What can be added to this? How can we help move this forward, right? In this time and place that we're in now. So we will definitely be having those conversations in the coming months.
Thank you, Fernando. Clearly you can see this is an area of concern and it's a hot topic. So if after you meet with council member and DCLA at the end of this month, or you said at the end of this month or next?
Yeah, we're aiming for the end of this month. Hopefully it doesn't get moved because it's been moved 5 times, but we're aiming for end of this month.
I understand. We would definitely appreciate an update, please, if you could find time in your schedule to visit us next month on the 16th. Hopefully you've had that meeting already, and you can give us an update just so that we keep community members and CB11 abreast on what's happening there. we would really appreciate that.
Yeah, what I'll do is for this meeting, I didn't come prepared for a briefing of on La Marqueta. So what I can do for next month, if you want to add me to the agenda, I can do a presentation on La Marqueta and then give a readout of that meeting if it happened, of that walkthrough.
Sure, that's not a problem. I think, just so you can, you know, kind of know where more or less the conversation is geared towards. We understand that La Marqueta right now is undergoing, repairs for MTA. And above it and beneath it, it makes it very difficult for businesses who are there right now to operate on a daily basis. Me being a restaurant owner myself, I hear them and it's like, I feel what they're going through. It's tough, it's hard. I spoke to Cocotazo, one of the restaurants that's here, and she's very happy there. She loves the space. She does feel like that is where she should be. But again, the operations is difficult, it's hard. Cause of, you know, the electricity that not being and, you know, all other types of
Yeah.
issues that the space has.
So I'll come prepared next month to talk about, you know, brief overview of La Marqueta, what the vision was, where we are, what the challenges have been, and what, you know, how we're trying to negotiate that, and also, you know, what conversations we've been having with MTA, right, who's managing the Park Avenue viaduct work. So I'll come prepared to have a conversation on La Marqueta, and then hopefully I can also share a readout of the walkthrough of the Julia de Burgos site.
Thank you, Mr. Fernando. Any other
Thank you.
questions? No, okay. Have a good evening, thank you. Angel, Reggie's not on yet, right?
I do not see Reggie.
Okay, I texted him, he's busy juicing.
Well, that's good.
That is good, and so I feel like it's as we're economic development, we can help him out a little bit and speak on behalf. I have his website open. This is New Level Juice. To my knowledge, he's been in East Harlem since 2015. So he's approaching his 10-year mark. They're located at 2244 First Avenue. Their Gmail is newleveljuice@gmail.com. The contact information they have on their website is 917-292-6616. They provide juicing, smoothies, all type of nutritional help for our community. Let's go out and support them. They're open from Monday to Saturday from 12 noon to 7 p.m. and Sundays from 11 to 7. You guys can check out their website, it looks super cool. I frequent there a lot, and everything that he has is, it's just amazing, it tastes really, really good. He does do, sometimes educational walkthroughs with students from schools, which I think is great because, one of the components of generational, wealth is making sure that our communities are healthy and our kids are growing up to be healthy as well, so. Check him out, please, when you have a chance. That was our small business spotlight, by the way.
You said new level or next level?
New Level Juice.
New Level.
His name is Reggie, Black entrepreneur, very, very easygoing, cool person to talk to. Yes, so that was our small business spotlight, and we're gonna move on to our old business. Quickly, I think everyone in this room, Christina, besides you, I didn't ask you, did you have a chance to see April's Google Drive with the goals of the committee?
No.
Okay, do you know how to access the
The drive?
Google Drive? Yes,
Mhm.
okay, perfect, so, for the next meeting, we will be revisiting it. I think everyone in this room pretty much filled it out, so I don't think there's a need for Angel to show us how to access the Gmail. I think it was more so for the committee members that haven't been able to log in yet. But we do want to,
Community Board 11 folder.
yeah, we do want to revisit our goals and make sure that all of the committee members have, you know, what their vision would like to be for what we do here. So that we can continue to work into years after, yes.
What is it called? Cause there's like a load of stuff. Okay.
Okay, and then, but I did wanna revisit the budget somehow, maybe prepare for next month so that we can get updates on like what we, just for September, just so we're always ahead, because you guys know that June is around the corner, then everybody goes to recess, and then September comes and we're like, okay, district needs, but we can do work now into the summertime, so that our district needs and budget align with, you know, who we actually have coming to present and our agendas throughout the year. Any other old business? No, okay, new business? No, everyone's tired tonight.
Time to start raining.
Roll call.
I just got notice.
Thank you, anyway.
April Audrey. Mark Bogorski.
Present.
Brandon Gillespie.
Present.
Christina Johnson.
Present.
Giselle Malave.
Present.
Morris is absent. Eugene Rodriguez is excused. Vinnie Torres is absent. Jenny Tromsky is absent. Anne Marie Vasquez.
Present.
And Jason Lee is absent. We have one.
And everyone, thank you for coming.
You guys stick around for 1 minute.
Okay.